Hey there, how's it going? Today I'm going to talk about GSAP again and text animation. Surprise, surprise. We're going to build this fade from left animation, just like that. And we're going to get into some more advanced topics. We're going to talk about plugins. So, the ScrollTrigger plugin specifically with GSAP. We're going to talk about Flash of unstyled content. The reason I like using GSAP within Webflow is that it makes these character by character kind of more fluid animations a lot easier to handle. And let's see. Today I'm going to be going from my Webflow resources library. I just released this, and if you check the description below, I'm giving away free access to this right now. So definitely click that link and follow along here. You'll be able to copy paste. But I'm not going to copy paste today. As always, I like to go from scratch. So eventually, we're going to work towards this step 4 optional code that we have here, but we'll start very basic. So let's get into it. I have an empty project here. Just going to give us some room to work with. This will be flex center center with a height of 100 viewport height. And then I'm going to drag some text in here. Call this, let's give it an emoji. And just style it just a little bit. Okay, I like that. And I'm going to give this a custom attribute. You can call this whatever you want. I'll call it data WB text. And this is what we're going to use to select the element that's within the DOM, and we're going to manipulate that and do fancy things with that. GSAP is going to need this, and so is the split type library that we're going to use. The other thing I want to do is I want to load all the libraries that I plan to use. So I'm going to come into the code section here, come to the GreenSap installation or GreenSap GSAP installation page. We use the CDN. I said I'm going to use ScrollTrigger today. We don't need that yet, so we'll come get that later. But I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, put it here, and then I'm going to come to this split type library. This is Luke PV split type in GitHub, and I'm going to get his CDN link here. And we'll pop that in. And then I'm going to be coding in Code Sandbox today. This is just an empty static project, so I'm going to grab this link here. And we'll put our source. Let's go ahead and save that. And now back in here, let me just console log loaded. Oop. Save that and publish this one. And we'll just verify that everything's up and running. Okay. And I just used the Option Command I there, and we see that we've got loaded. So that's great. Option Command I brings up the Chrome DevTools. So I'm going to be using this if I run into any issues. As well, I'm going to show you something later when we get into Flash of unstyled content. Okay, so let's go ahead and build out our animation now. I'm just going to drag this over here. And we'll go ahead and let me refer back here. So I'm going to start with this window add event listener load. I was thinking of maybe waiting to add this, but we'll just do it now. And what this is doing is it's saying, hey, we're going to wait until all of your HTML and CSS loads to run any of the stuff that you pass as the second argument, which will be a function. And so one way we can do this is say, I'm just going to deviate a little bit here. Init, this is probably a common way that you'll see this done. And then here we're just going to pass an anonymous function that calls our init function. Okay, so all this is saying is that once all your HTML and CSS loads, we're going to run this your function called init here. And now this is where we want to put the JavaScript to do our animations. So the first thing is that we need to split this text block. We need to split it up into characters. and we're going to use the split type library for that. And so we see that the split type library gives us this couple options here. The one way you can do it is just say const text new split type and then pass in your selector here. In this case, they're passing an ID. I'm going to pass a data attribute. But I'm going to do it just a little bit differently. It'll also take an element itself. And to do that, I'm going to come here. And we'll say const my text equals document.query selector. And we're going to select for that data attribute that we made earlier, which was data WB equals, we need brackets when we're doing data attributes. Data WB equals, and now double quotes, and we'll put text. It's actually important here, the single quotes versus double quotes, so pay attention there. And then now we'll say const split text equals new split type. It's confusing split text between split types, so let me just name them the same. It doesn't matter, but just trying to be as clear as possible here. And we'll just pass my text to that. And is that how they want us to do it? New split type? Yep. So the reason we're getting this red underline here is that Code Sandbox doesn't actually know about the split type library. We loaded it in Webflow, but in Webflow is where we also loaded the split type in GSAP. So these scripts that are being declared here or that we're retrieving here aren't like passing into this or any reason. We're just this is essentially just a code editor. So I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And now, let me say, and what we'll see, let's go ahead. I think this was saved. Did we publish? We published. This is saved. Now if I refresh here, I'm gonna go ahead and inspect the type that we have. And you see it's divided everything into characters. And if we go even deeper into the DOM tree here, we have our original data WB equals text, but then split type has gone and made us a line. It's gone and divided everything into words. And then each word has been divided into characters too. So we can target all of these to perform however we want to do the animation. And so what I'm going to do, my general strategy is I'm just going to fade each letter starting from the left from an opacity of 0 to 1 with a stagger. So I'm going to declare a text division. There's two ways you could do this. I just like doing it this way because then it's really easy to change to words and lines. But let's focus on this block of code right now. So it's going to be a GSAP from animation. So we'll come down here and we'll say GSAP dot. That one always gets me. GSAP escape dot from. And now the dot from, it's going to take an element itself or some sort of selector. In this case, we want to pass the split type. And we could say dot chars if we wanted to. But the way I'm kind of enjoying doing it now is say const text division equals chars, and then we can just use this notation. Okay. So now we've selected what we want to animate. Now we need to tell it what to animate from. And we want to start from an opacity of 0. And we want to stagger it, we'll say 0.1 seconds. I think that was it. Let me just double check. Oh, we set the ease too. By default, it uses a power2.out, so let's just use the default. Come back here, refresh, and look, we've got the fade animation going on. So that's pretty cool. Now, something you probably want to do, I'm trying to think of what I want to show first. Yeah, I'm on a pretty fast connection right now, and if I do Shift Command R to do a hard refresh, you still can't really see it, but if I go ahead and throttle, I'm going to come into the network tab, and here in throttling, I'm going to say slow 3G. And if I hard refresh again, you'll see it's just going to take a lot longer to load, and we see it's just Chrome is actually throttling everything, and it's taking a long time. The text is actually loaded, but it doesn't animate. And so that's pretty non-ideal. And this is that flash of of unstyled content that I'm talking about is that your user might load the page, your HTML and CSS all load, which is fade from left, but we haven't yet loaded the JavaScript yet. So this event hasn't finished yet, but you still have HTML and CSS on the page. So that's kind of unideal. And a lot of people I see in Webflow get around this by just setting the opacity of this stuff to 0 to start out. And then you could use like a 2 animation or something. But I really hate trying to work without actually being able to see a good representation in Webflow. I mean, the whole reason that we use Webflow in the first place is to have a visual representation of our code. So I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do is in the home, in the head section, I'm going to write some custom CSS here. And what's cool about this section is that the CSS isn't loaded onto the page until we actually publish. And sometimes we want that. So I'll open a style tag and then close the style tag. And I'm going to target the data attribute. So we'll say like this, data WB equals text. And now we're going to say visibility. We're coding naked here. That's what I say when I'm coding just in the Webflow editor, but that's okay. I'm just going to fix this. And visibility links the visibility of your element to the opacity. So once the opacity goes above 0, then it will make it visible. And so what we're saying is, hey, hide the element when this is like some of the first code that gets called. So before we even load the HTML, the CSS knows to hide everything. And then we're not actually loading the code and running the code until down here. Now, something that's a little bit tricky is we're selecting the outer wrapper. So here we're saying data WB equals text, but in our code, we are animating the characters. And I'll show you what this looks like. So it's not going to work. We need to publish though. Come here and refresh. Oh, something just fell. So it's not visible. Page is still loading and it's done, but it's never visible. If we inspect, the text is there, but what's invisible are these characters. Or sorry, they're not invisible. Their opacity is 1, but they're nested under text here, which we still have visibility equal to hidden. So let's solve that. You can see, as we're getting into the more advanced stuff here, what we do is we use this GSAP.set, and we're going to use auto alpha, and then we're going to animate auto alpha. So let's go ahead and we'll target both the full text element itself and the class that split type uses, which is, I think it's .char, right? Let's go ahead and verify that. Yeah, just char, so not chars. So those are both going to be visibility hidden when we load the page. Go ahead and save that. And now back in our code, once we have split the type, that's when that char class is actually used. So we've defined the char class. The browser already knows to set its visibility to hidden. So now we're safe to say gsap.set. And we're going to take, which one do we want? My text. We want to set that to auto alpha of 1. And then we're clear here to say for the char, animate from an opacity of 0. But instead of using opacity, we're going to change this to auto alpha. So let's go ahead and save, make sure this is done publishing, and we'll refresh. And I'll change it back from the slow 3G here in a second. Still loading, and I don't have anything. Why is that? So the visibility of page is fine, text. It looks like it hasn't actually split up our text. So did I get an error? Unexpected token : Where did I write that? Okay, this needs to be wrapped in curly braces because it's expecting an object here. And it put these parentheses around it because it didn't know what to do with it. So I will just delete those and let's save. And I'll refresh once more, and then we'll kick it off the slow network here. And there we go. Now we're getting everything without that flash of unstyled content. Let me go ahead and put it back on no throttling, and we're back in business here. Everything's much faster, which is nice. Okay, so that completes the flash of unstyled content. The last thing I want to talk about is that you'll notice this is animating right away when we refresh the page. Now, what if we were to want to do the same animation but lower in the page? Let's see what happens. I'm going to take page, and I'm just going to copy this whole thing so that now if I scroll, I have another fade from left. Let me give this another emoji so that we know the difference. Okay, and I need to publish. Come back to and refresh. Starts animating. If I scroll down, oh, you know what we need to do? We need to give this the, let's see. So we've given it data WB of text. These both have it. But in our code, we're saying document.querySelector, and querySelector, if we search JavaScript npm querySelector, returns the first element within the document that matches the specific selector or group of selectors. So we're only getting one, and we want all of them, right? So what I can do is say querySelector all for this data attribute. And let's call this my text elements. So now there's many in there. And we're going to have to use a loop to affect all of those. So we'll say my text elements dot for each. And this is going to take a function that's going to run on each element within that list or array of text elements. So for that, we'll just call this element. And we're going to copy this code here, or cut, and paste it in here. I'm going to save to get auto formatting. So now we want to split type for, instead of my text, we want to do it on element. And then this is going to be the same. And we're going to set, rather than my text, on the element. And can't spell. The auto alpha. And then split type of text division. This should all be the same. So I'll go ahead and save. And now I'm going to come back here and refresh. That's going. And now that's animating too, but you saw it's already animating as soon as we refresh the page, which is definitely why go through the trouble of making an animation when the user can't even see it. So this is where ScrollTrigger comes in. So let's go ahead and get ScrollTrigger. I'm back on the GSAP installation page. I'm going to select ScrollTrigger. Just going to copy this one because I already got the other one. Come back to Webflow. In our custom code, going to add ScrollTrigger. I'll add it right after the main GSAP library. Go ahead and publish that. Come to our code. Now what I need to do is, I still want to do this once everything's loaded, so it'll be within our init function, but I'm going to use the register plugin function. I just want to make sure I get the right syntax for that. So it's this gsap.register plugin ScrollTrigger. Go ahead and copy and paste that. The other way you could go is gsap ScrollTrigger. Just look at the documentation, right? That's what we should always be doing if they changed it or anything like that. And so this is a simple example of how to use it. Maybe they don't have their register plugin in here. Let me search register. Yeah, here we go. How do I include this plugin in my project? So let's copy and paste it from GSAP instead of my amazing ultimate Webflow resources library, which is in the description below. All right. Enough of that. Paste that here. So now we've registered ScrollTrigger. And what we want to do is for each element, which is down here, this is where our animation is happening. We're going to say ScrollTrigger, which we can now use because we've registered the plugin. We want it when the element enters the viewport. So we can go ahead and save that. Make sure this has published. Come back to our website, refresh. This one's already in the viewport, so we expect that to animate. Scroll down, and now that one animates. All right, that is awesome. We set everything up. We used loops. We used ScrollTrigger, and I'm pretty sure that is everything that I want to touch on. The ScrollTrigger does have a lot of customizations you can give to it. I just did the most simple example. If we look at the documentation here, you have all these. You can pass it. So this is a simple example, right? Which is saying, hey, let's animate this, whatever is given a box class to an X position of 500. But the advanced example, ScrollTrigger here, gets a JavaScript object that I am highlighting with a whole bunch of properties. So you can set the trigger, pin the trigger element while active. I'm not quite sure what that one does. You have start and end. These are probably the most common ones you're going to want to use to set the start and end. So if you set an end, then you can, do it while scrolling, have the animation play out. If you just set a start, you can refine where the animation actually starts taking place, which right now it just defaults to when the bottom of the element is at the bottom of the viewport. And that's there in the documentation as well. So you can go ahead and play around with all this. Maybe I'll make a tutorial later on how that works. Other than that, thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Definitely helps me a lot. Check out this super cool resource that I have. It's packed with a bunch of stuff, not just JavaScript and CSS. I just added my pre-launch checklist here, which has like 28 different things that I check for accessibility, SEO, and just best practices before I hand off a site to a client, before I publish. So this will really help you market your freelancing skills and things like that. Anyways, thanks again, and talk to you soon. Bye.